kind of the easy deploy, kind of pseudo, banner kind of painting. So, and you have the burla too, and I'm kind of traveling around, like saying, like, you don't have one ground, you go like this, that, like the painting takes you to different things. So, in these kind of paintings, the chords create a frame, let's say. I was really interested not to hide anything, like to say, it's not going to be a frame, it's going to be more like the chords themselves discharge the tension of the surface, the topographical surface, into the wall. So it was almost like erected, what is the name, the American artist that did the canvas pieces on the floor? Richard Tuttle. Huh? Mm-hmm. They're kind of like an erected sort of, and I always favor this type of camping or sort of culture of the move, nomad, like there is a certain thing actually of this type of new technology of chords that are climbing or things like that I find it attractive. I find it a new type of attraction into the raw paintings because I started using them really thick, and I realized that they were composed in a highly sophisticated computer weaving, so you can use them for color coordinations too, for accentuation, so you can show the tension, you can show them as a climbing metaphor, as a weave, as a net, but at the same time for their color. So it was an ideal situation. If you see, I use them in really different, sometimes I draw with them, sometimes you just see them as an interference, sometimes they are really highly there, sometimes they are just hanging on the back of the paintings, like they are, you see one color. So there is this sort of, it creates this sort of almost like literally they're in the web of the painting.
Yeah, and sometimes you use it also as a metaphor, for example. I mean, in this podium painting, you put this blue, red, and white ropes into the banner of the United States. So it's a kind of resonance of the banner itself.
Totally.
Or
totally.
In this painting, Eric and Dylan, the hand of one of these victims is bound to climbing.
Yes.
It looks like
a puppet.
Yeah, like a puppet.
Yeah. And to me, I would say something really interesting, but we think in the art world that a lot of people have time to follow your work. And the truth is that, I mean, you have to be, and that's another danger, because not even highly acclaimed and super, let's say, in the status of pop singer artists, have the understanding of let's say, people don't really have a kind of casual relation to their work. And through the 90s, I was considered the artist that was doing brush marks. And I was doing all kinds of other things, but people would just keep thinking. And I say, they're right. I mean, people don't have time. I mean, I have to have time for them. So I did an obvious relation to be a painter that I do canvas now. So maybe in the next 10 years, I will come up with another formula. So they'll think, oh, so you do brush marks, you do canvas, and you do X. The future. So that's kind of important because I have a feeling that there's some certain things that have to be, it's not the word facilitated, but it's a way of being obvious, to make it, to render it obvious in a generous and as frank and brutal way. And art has a possibility, I think. And painting, actually, that's one of the interesting things about painting, that passing through a painting is a really different thing than passing through any other thing. A lot of people tell me too, oh, but these are sculptorial paintings. Nonsense. I mean, these are blow-up paintings, but all the materialities are working through atmospheric passage of black, shadows, all kinds of things. They had nothing to do with sculpture. This is the closest, I mean, Linda English, any kind of plasticity on sculpture have nothing to do with my painting. I mean, and I always say that, but I know that people are going to keep telling me that I'm a sculptural painter. But I have to deal with it. Yeah. But my mission is to say no, no, no.
No, that's why we like to hear artist statements.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's come a little bit to the appearance of these paintings, which are, you know, in one hand incomparable to other painters, other paintings. On the other hand, there might be any relationship to the work of Chuck Close, for example, or Sigmar Polke. I mean, in the way you're using the grid. Can you tell us about possible relationship?
Yeah, I will see it like dampened with the relation to the content, to the notion of complex painting, and in that way, I have a whole archaeological tree of artists from, let's say, that we talked before, from Erzberger. To me, Erzberger is an important artist because he's a highly paradoxical artist too, hard to classify artist. Polka, to me, have been always, in my mind, it looked like one of the last realist painters, because he showed you the misery of the moment, the post-concentration camp, the almost impossible, absurd idea of still doing a painting, the alchemy of the painting, the shambleness of that moment, the kind of, I call it Plan Marshall moment too. I mean, all kinds of things operate on that work. And what I mean by complexity is that there is a technical model that relates to the materials, to the representation issue, to the physicality of the work, to the phenomenological, a highly complex digestion of the moment. Really, really important. The same thing with Erzberger, the same thing with certain raw Warhol. There is almost like, they are like paint, like the electric chairs. They are like whips to the viewer. I mean, straight, highly impact oriented. And I'm interested in that in a certain kind of real realism. And that includes abstraction. Okay?
Yeah, I mean also this kind of discontinuity that is presented in Sigmar Polke's raster dots,
Exactly.
in Warhol's silkscreen work, also in Artschwager. I think that there's a relationship that all these works and also your work has these intersections. They are not. It's not a flow.
Right.
Or you call it sometimes flow and cut.
Yes, yes. I would say that there are artists that are total artists, unitarian artists, like they do oneness, and they do it. And then sometimes they jump into another oneness. Like Richter is one of those, because I'm an archivalist. And I have my admiration for Gerhard Richter, but he will do it like a test, like do this, do that, do that. And I'm more connected to the spirit of Polke in that way, because it's a more of the paradox are work within the transitions, the connection, the connective tissues of the real. Meaning, when you go, you see the landscape, you know that the landscape smells, and that you don't know if you're going to go there and somebody will kind of steal your money. All that unpredictability and mappability of reality, that kind of post-cubistic is in Erzberger, it is in the paradox. It is that you find the representation in the place that you thought that you will be presented. You get the gift in the moment that they steal you. You know, that kind of real reality.
series, some USA stories. They are, I can see two different types. Some are connected to certain historical events, like the Jim Jones, for example, or the Fallujah painting, and some other are more related to certain kind of reality, like podium. I mean, it's not a certain event, it's just a kind of, it has general meaning. Also, this painting here, what's the title again? Breaking News. And also, if you think of Limo, and also it does not show an event. So, can you talk about the decision, how you came to these two different types of historical or reality?
Well, they are events, but they're all events, or they are not, because the event is the painting, really. And if it's something important about this painting is that there is that connective tissue between the reality of an event that was photographed, but it was impossible, and it shows completely the failure of photography, and the possibility that a pictorial event could make justice of it, or connect to it, let's say. And what you really see is a pictorial transmutation, let's say. And they're all subjects, let's say, because in all these series, I thought that there were paradigmatic, like a crossroad moments in human evolution, let's say, and they are I choose them for different reasons, but they are a complexity of things of how I choose a subject. Let's say some are straightforward, like for instance the Waco. I mean, I've been living like more than 20 years in America, and I was somehow involved, let's say, in the debate, in the marking of the culture, in the whole evolution of these things, let's say. And I find myself that the subjects were following me constantly. I was kind of putting things together, like investigative reporter. I start saying like, yeah, that corporation did that, and then the evolution of that, and then boom, you put together something, and you have a cluster of possible reality. So the paintings are like in those kinds of points of aha moments. So, like for instance, I say that they're all subject because, for instance, the limousine piece is actually almost like a constructivist, like flag of today, today's luxury. Let's say the subject of guarantee envy, the Grammy. This was actually a moment where it happens all the time that the ritual, that the have-nots look at the haves in the cultural sequence between the limousine and the red carpet. And it's like, if you think of the red carpet, it's almost like the other time we had the red flag, and now you have all these people like chickens, like with feathers and things like that, walking on the red carpet. And you look at it, and there is a flag, there is a model, you could say abstract. I mean, it functions, it's a pretty simple thing, it's this sort of heraldical, symbolic model, you would say. And it's real, but it's a crystallization of a certain type of organization of reality. And there was a lot of investment of energy on that. And that to me is a really interesting situation. So, you see, that one is not like Fallujah, but to me that subject, that moment, is as important to tell the reality as much as, let's say, the Michael Jackson piece. Because the Michael Jackson piece, this is it. I mean, I lived that moment too. And I saw video of it. I saw photographs. I lived for a week looking say, why this scene is so important? And I feel like goosebumps looking at it. And I grow up with this Arlequin, this almost like Picasso-like dancing African-American kid. And I started analyzing as a sort of investigative report on it. And it's like, why I'm so interested in this figure. He turned himself white. So my attraction was the fact that in the Michael Jackson figure, and by him being in London with a sort of fascist-looking red background with dark glasses, he was selling himself his funeral. He was the perfect pop figure. He was selling his post-life. And I said, aha, that's the destiny of the crystallization of pophoodness, you see? So after that you can understand all the evolution of the you know, the industrial machine of entertainment. Okay? So from that kind of, and I invite everybody, you see the early Michael Jackson videos that look like a Greek kind of, like a Matisse painting, okay? And then you see my painting and you see the last, when he sold himself to the world. So it's like a zombie. It's like, and that's why it's so interesting. Again, I go into the other subject, the zombie. Why the zombie is so important in America if it's an alien? Because America have the karma of running on blood, okay? It was built by black blood for centuries. So it's kind of part of a sort of like almost a hyper-layer genocide done little by little, okay? So the zombie is almost like the thing that nobody sees, the thing that they know that they cannot know, okay? Almost like a symbolic, I don't want to deal with kind of situation. And of course we see it as all the monster of racism in America, of course, like, you know, even before the war, you know, you see eugenics movement and the dialogues, and, you know, Americans are going like, no, we didn't say anything, you know, it's like, you know, the Germans were the ones. And you see that we are just like totally invested on one of the more terrible things that influence a lot of part of Nazism. I mean, so it's frightening, but it's this kind of realism that we want to sort of like know. So the zombie is almost like the horror movie version of that reality that we breathe every day. You know, the situation that the angry ghost of the voodoo, you know, the voodoo actually is actually highly connected to the creativity of this spectral figure. But in the America, Hollywood is tinted by the entertainment zombie, and it becomes this sort of like, let's make a zombie that only eats woman. Let's make a zombie that, you know what I mean? All these sort of species of zombiness. But it's related to that infallible and structural situation of the Middle Passage that is always there beneath, in the basement, you know, of American reality.
For example, if you think in relationship to zombies, if you think about the vampire, do you think it's more a European type?
European, yeah. European means much more the Conde Dracula, you know, it's more like Conde. I mean, America is more about, you know, proletarian, like the illusion that there's not even classes in America. They don't like class. So it's kind of interesting because now, because of, you know, Occupy Wall Street and all these people go like, oh my God, we thought that we have money. We used to be middle class, and now we are poor. So now classes start looking a little bit like, they realize that all the jobs are in China, nobody knows how they brought it there. They start counting, and now they're discovering a reality covered by layers and layers of, you know, representations of media. So, you know, that's...
I mean, to me, the way you painted Michael Jackson, this has a kind of interpretation
CNN. I mean, I always say that, you know, I used to have a good relation with Stephen Parrino, that he was pretty show a lot. In America, he died really young. I mean, it's pretty sad. But I really appreciate that he was talking about the undead painting. That is not dead, because, you know, like so many people decide to conceptualize painting and turn painting into a document and think the painting was dead. And a lot of people like him was actually keeping this sort of undead painting. That is another way of saying zombie. And I was interested in that, in a way that painting could lose a little bit in the real, but it could have a chance in the symbolic, or it could have a chance in the imaginary. And painting is not dead or alive, but it could actually just become something else. Like, for instance, now we have a lot of personalized painting, a lot of fancy painters that, you know, do things that you don't know why they do it, or how we praise them. But, you know, there's a community that like them, so taste is always around. In general, my paintings nobody likes them, so that's not a problem. You know, in general, I mean, they're heavy to the taste, and I'm really conscious about that because I use the materiality, you know, the kind of core of the work is quite abstract. So it's a defense to the default that everything becomes somehow assimilated. So I'm really conscious about the kind of lubricity and like decomposed like way of the painting. So I lost my train of thought. What was the question?
I think there was no certain question in the beginning. No, let's come back to this work. I mean, we talk about Michael Jackson. I mean, the way you put this candle half seen hiddenly into this figure. I can see another thing, for example, in the painting Limo. I mean, you don't paint a red carpet in a limo, but you paint a red carpet which is almost gone. You know, you paint holes mainly, and the lower part is just has just a little thing of a red carpet. It's mostly its holes. So is it also a kind of interpretation of this scenery?
Yes. That's where I talk about the testing, let's say. In all different works, I try to organize the behavior, let's say, of painting, or the pictorial activities in a different way, so the different repertoire of things will create different things. Like in the Limo, for instance, I was really curious to see this. There are double-sidedness of this because the weave. It's really important to point out that each painting is weave and the stretch of it. Everything is done in relation to the subject. There's nothing generic about it. So we weave the canvas in a perspectival situation. So you have this sort of feeling that you're entering through a perspectival field. And it's barely painted. So the way of passing through the painting is more important than what is holding you as surface. And the Limo is actually more almost like a quasi-geometrical sort of silhouette, let's say. And that to me was like let's say the strategic idea, and then the tactical thing was to make the painting happen, you know, through what I always say that heaviness of the work into the painting. So there is a certain processual truthness. Like for instance in that painting, since I have it in front, it was really hard for me to sort of leave that kind of hand, almost non-painted in certain parts. So there was a passing through, there was a coming out that is attacking, and forming, and all in that kind of silhouette-like situation. The easiest thing will be just to default and just paint that thing, like in a normal way. So it was a pretty hard thing to do, for instance. Or to try to create the fluidity of the book-like thing. That was another strategy. Or this kind of figure that is actually like a whole topography of combinations of painting, like ready-made cast parts, weave, painted and cutted. All this kind of multiplicity of things are working in different parts of the work in order to, let's say, make the subject vibrate in different ways. So the painting is really resonating with the source. It's not really in a clear relation of representation. I say that resonate, echo, is trying to go more to a sense of, I call it anabasis. Like, yes, I start with an image, but then I forget it, and I go through the painting thinking that I'm going through that source, but I develop a way out of the painting, or a way back into the painting. So here was the vent, here was the source, and I sort of go somewhere.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, so it's about the creation, how you come from a certain image that you found in the internet or wherever to this painting. I mean, it goes in different directions until it finished.
Yeah.
And I mean, for me, it's interesting. I mean, there are other painters who deal with historical subject. I mean, if you go back to the past, for example, if you think of Guyana, how do you relate yourself to historical painting in general?
I admire many of the attempts for different reasons. I mean, Goya, I always have an appointment in El Prado to see the black paintings of Goya. That's one of my favorite paintings by far. And there is something that all the classical model of painting is there, broken down to the immensity of the future of painting. And there is a way